The following content may contain visuals that are disturbing, graphic, or sensitive in nature. Viewer discretion is advised. This material is intended for mature audiences and may not be suitable for all viewers. Please exercise caution while watching, and if you find such content distressing, we recommend discontinuing viewing. This disclaimer is provided to ensure awareness and to prioritize viewer well-being.
The war between Israel and Hamas has now entered its 62nd day, and it's time to get you the latest updates straight from the war front. Israeli forces and Hamas indulged in house-to-house battles. Israeli forces surrounded the house of top Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Hamas's Gaza leader Yahya Sinwar is hiding underground, according to the Israeli Defense Forces. Israeli forces operating in the heart of Khan Younis. Israel has approved minimal fuel supply to Gaza. That's according to the Israeli Prime Minister's office. UN chief has invoked Article 99 to force the United Nations Security Council to address the war. 1,207 Palestinians have been killed since the truce collapsed, according to Gaza's health ministry. Israeli forces and Hamas terrorists indulged in house-to-house fighting over the control of the city of Khan Younis on Wednesday. Khan Younis is Gaza's second biggest city. The Israeli Defense Forces claimed that it had carried out airstrikes on about 250 targets in the Gaza Strip during the past 24 hours, while Hamas claimed that it killed 10 Israeli soldiers in Khan Younis and injured several others. It's a claim that could not be verified. The United Nations reported a significant increase of Israeli bombardments of Gaza since Monday afternoon, accompanied by intense ground fighting and an increase in Hamas rocket attacks targeting Israel. Amidst the escalating conflict, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres invoked a rarely used clause in the UN Charter to raise the issue on his own initiative before the United Nations Security Council, emphasizing that the intensifying conflict may exacerbate existing threats to international peace and security. He wrote in a letter to the Council, and I quote, "We are facing a severe risk of collapse of the humanitarian system," unquote. The situation is fast deteriorating into a catastrophe with potentially irreversible implications for Palestinians as a whole and for peace and security in the region, according to UN Chief Antonio Guterres. Hundreds of thousands of Gazans, meanwhile, continue to flee to the west and south of the city of Khan Younis, including to the Rafah border. However, as per the United Nations, shelters in these areas were far beyond capacity, forcing the displaced Palestinians to sleep on the streets or in empty lots. Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar told a rally in Gaza last year that Hamas would deploy fighters and rockets in a fierce strike on Israel, the nation that imprisoned him for 23 years. On the 7th of October, the deadly Hamas terror attack on Israel showed that his threat was real and not mere talk.
Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar's speech in Gaza last year was no idle threat.
We will come to you with an endless number of rockets. We will come to you in a flood of soldiers without limit.
It sounded like crowd-pleasing hyperbole. But at this time, a secret plan had already been hatched for an assault on Israel, a country that jailed Sinwar for 23 years before he was freed and rose to the Hamas leadership. October 7 would be the deadliest day in Israel's history, in which the militants killed 1,200 people and took 240 hostages, Israeli tallies say. Israel has retaliated with bombardment and a ground invasion, killing at least 15,000 Palestinians. Sinwar spent half his adult life behind bars in Israel. He was jailed in 1988 for planning the abduction and killing of 2 Israeli soldiers and the murder of 4 Palestinian collaborators. This was the moment he was freed in 2011, one of more than 1,000 Palestinians released for a single Israeli soldier.
This is one of the biggest strategic events in the history of our people's cause in the past years. So we are living a moment of unusual joy.
Sinwar has been leading negotiations for prisoner swaps with hostages, sources say, and it's a personal issue. He has vowed to free all Palestinian prisoners Israel holds. Sinwar is a ruthless man, according to Michael Kubi, a former official for Israel's Shin Bet intelligence agency, who interrogated him for 180 hours in jail. The now 61-year-old militant leader was then in his late 20s, Kubi says, but dedicated to attacking Israel.
Yahya Sinwar was at the prison. He was the chief of the whole Hamas prisoners. They were sitting together. They make discussion inside the prison, of course, and they taught how to fight the Israelis, after they will be released. That was his plan.
Born in the Khan Younis refugee camp, Sinwar rose to prominence as a hardline enforcer. Before jail, he was head of the Al-Majd security apparatus which tracked, killed and punished Palestinians accused of collaborating with Israel. Sources who know him, whether Hamas or Israeli, agree his devotion to the militant movement is extraordinary.
So he told me, the Hamas is my wife, the Hamas is my child, the Hamas for me is everything.
Sinwar is one of Israel's most wanted. This was Israeli Army Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi in October.
The one who decided on this despicable attack was Yahya al-Sinwar, the sovereign of the Gaza Strip. Therefore, he and the whole system under him are as good as dead.
Regional officials say Israel is unlikely to end the war until Sinwar is dead or captured. 2 military experts said that would be an important symbolic victory. But achieving it would be long and costly for Israel, with no guarantee of success. Sinwar Mohammed Daif, the mastermind of last month's assault, and a third commander, direct military operations, possibly from bunkers beneath Gaza, Hamas sources have told Reuters. Some tunnels are believed to be 80 metres underground, and Kubi says Sinwar wouldn't give up.
Even he will fight. I'm sure that Yahya Sinwar wouldn't leave the Gaza Strip.
Satellite imagery collected by Maxar Technologies provided a detailed snapshot of the challenges and efforts in managing the displacement crisis in southern Gaza amidst the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. The images highlight a number of schools, hospitals, and other locations where displaced Palestinians have sought refuge over the past week. The visuals also depict new field hospitals which have been established in Khan Younis and Rafah. Israeli troops fought fierce battles with Hamas in an expanding offensive into southern Gaza on Wednesday, forcing tens of thousands of displaced Palestinian civilians to cram into a city close to the Egyptian border to avoid Israeli bombardment. Away from the Israel-Hamas war, in a significant move, the government of the United Kingdom has nominated Samir Shah, a seasoned TV executive and CEO of Juniper TV, as the preferred candidate for the position of BBC chair. Shah, with a rich background at the BBC and London Weekend Television, brings valuable experience to navigate UK's evolving media landscape. Culture Minister Lucy Fraser expressed confidence in Shah's ability to provide the necessary support and scrutiny for the BBC's future challenges. Born in India, 71-year-old Shah will undergo questioning by a parliamentary committee in the UK before a formal confirmation. Reflecting on his potential role, Shah emphasized the BBC's vital duty in reaching a diverse audience amidst a competitive media market. The BBC welcomed Shah's selection, anticipating his formal inclusion pending completion of due process. Now, this appointment follows the resignation of the previous BBC chair, Richard Sharp, in the month of April this year, paving the way for the BBC board member, Ilan Closs-Stephens, to serve as the acting chair in the meanwhile. Away from that, families of COVID-19 victims gathered as former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson appeared at the pandemic inquiry. Boris Johnson, who served from 2019 to 2022, resigned amidst scandals for attending lockdown parties. He faced emotional inquiry session exploring Britain's high pandemic death toll. The former British Prime Minister attempted to apologize for the thousands of lives lost to COVID-19 while he was in power, but was interrupted by protesters as he tried to do so.
If he says today that he got the big things right, I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to sit there. How is 230,000 deaths not a big thing? Over the last 7 weeks, we have heard so much that is depressing, distressing, completely incredulous. And today I'm just dreading hearing that the older and vulnerable in our society were collateral damage. There must be accountability, not weak apologies. It can't happen again.
I just want answers. I want to know why this has happened, why he didn't learn from the mistakes of the first wave, why he didn't lock down sooner, and why my mum died when she didn't need to.
I'm going to be without my parents this Christmas, and if we don't learn lessons, there's going to be other families in the future who will suffer from government ineptitude.
And the way he thinks he'll be remembered in history is very different to the way that I'll remember him in history. I think that he's been responsible for the highest death toll that this country's seen since the Second World War, and that he needs to stand up and take some responsibility and accountability for what he's done, rather than lying through his teeth. I mean, he hasn't even had the decency to come and see us today. He snuck in first thing this morning because he didn't want to face bereaved families, and I think that says all you can say about Boris Johnson.
He'll be remembered as a Prime Minister who presided over one of the greatest peacetime tragedies of all times in the world. And I mean, he's a disgraced Prime Minister, ex-Prime Minister, so I think his legacy speaks for itself.
I understand the feelings of these victims and their families, and I am deeply sorry for the pain and the loss and the suffering of those victims and their families.
Senator Ron Wyden cautioned that unnamed governments are monitoring smartphone users through app push notification. Now, Wyden's letter to the Department of Justice highlighted foreign officials' demand for data from Google and Apple, revealing a concerning avenue for governments to track smartphones. Push notifications, commonly used by various apps to alert users about messages or updates, often go through Google and Apple servers, a fact many users are unaware of. Apps of all kinds rely on push notifications to alert smartphone users to incoming messages, breaking news, and other updates. These are the audible dings or visual indicators users get when they receive an email or their sports team wins a game. What users often do not realize is that almost all such push notifications travel over Google and Apple's servers. Now, Senator Wyden called on the U.S. Justice Department to repeal or modify any policies that impede this transparency. Meanwhile, Google unveiled Gemini, its latest AI model designed to emulate human behavior more effectively than previous models. Gemini excels in tasks such as comprehension, summarization, reasoning, coding, and planning. Available in 3 versions, Pro, Ultra, and Nano, its Pro version is already out, with the Ultra version set for an early release next year. Currently, Google has integrated the new Gemini Pro with its chatbot Bard, which is a direct competitor to ChatGPT. Users can have a text-based interaction with Gemini-powered Bard, but Google has promised support for other modalities soon. The new update is available in 170 countries and territories, but it is limited to the English language. Elon Musk's AI venture aims to raise over $1 billion through an equity offering, as disclosed in a filing with the U.S. market regulators. Elon's artificial intelligence project, launched in the month of July this year, holds ambitious objectives of comprehending the universe as we know it. Musk touts its intent to be maximally curious while maintaining caution regarding the potential risks associated with the technology. Take a look at this.
Elon Musk's artificial intelligence startup is set to raise $1 billion through an equity offering. That's according to a filing with US regulators on Tuesday. XAI launched in July this year with some pretty big goals, understanding the universe no less. Musk says his AI will be maximally curious, though he also continues to warn about the dangers posed by the technology.
Well, I think we are seeing the most disruptive force in history here. We will have for the first time something that is smarter than the smartest human.
Fundraising for AI projects remains a bright spot for startups this year. Among other deals, ChatGPT maker OpenAI secured $10 billion from major backer Microsoft. XAI last month launched its own chatbot dubbed Grok to rival ChatGPT and others. Musk has criticized competing products from big tech firms like Google as being riddled with censorship. His startup will be integrated into social network X, which he also owns, and available as a standalone app. The team behind it comes from Google's DeepMind unit and other top tech names.
Now, chip-making giant NVIDIA is working closely with the U.S. government to ensure new AI chips for the Chinese market are compliant with the export curbs. The firm has commanded more than 90% of China's $7 billion market for AI chips, but analysts say the latest curbs on the export of chips from the U.S. to America creates an opportunity for rivals to muscle in.
NVIDIA is working with the US government to ensure its latest chips comply with controls on exports to China. That's according to Chief Executive Jensen Huang on Wednesday. The firm has commanded more than 90% of China's $7 billion market for AI chips. But analysts say the latest US curbs create an opportunity for rivals to muscle in. Huang didn't comment on earlier Reuters reports that his company was delaying the launch of new chips especially crafted for China. He would only say that NVIDIA was working closely with Washington to ensure its products complied with the export controls. When posting its November earnings, the chipmaker warned that it expects a steep drop in fourth quarter sales to China as a result of the restrictions. Huang noted that the country normally accounts for about a fifth of NVIDIA sales, but he didn't say what the new number might be. He described Chinese tech giant Huawei as a formidable rival. Separately, Huang said NVIDIA was in talks with Singapore about a big investment there. The city-state has been developing its own AI model, dubbed Sea Lion.
Held in the major oil producer of the world, the United Arab Emirates. The key question at this year's UN climate talks at the COP28 summit was whether the final agreement will include a decision to phase down oil and gas. Take a look.
The issue at the heart of COP28 in Dubai is whether it will be the first UN climate conference to produce a global agreement to phase out fossil fuels. They're the biggest cause of climate change, and fossil fuels still produce around 80% of the world's energy. Here's a look at who's pushing for a deal. Norway, the US, Canada, Chile, Colombia, and some African nations, including Kenya and Ethiopia, are among the 80 countries seeking a deal. The European Union is also on board. Here's Climate Commissioner Wopke Hoekstra.
I want this COP to mark the beginning of the end for fossil fuels. This is a key part for the EU and for our negotiating mandates, meaning that all 27 European member states want this to be part of the negotiated outcome.
Opposition to a fossil fuel phase-out is led by Russia, Saudi Arabia, and China, diplomats said. Representatives of some African nations have said they could support a phase-out deal if wealthy countries agree to quit first. Uganda's energy minister said a deal could be acceptable if it allowed developing nations to exploit their resources in the near term. Asking the country to stop using fossil fuels, she said, was like asking Uganda to stay in poverty. Diplomats and observers told Reuters that some countries, like Saudi Arabia and China, have consistently raised the issue of equity at the talks, emphasizing the high historical contribution of wealthy nations to climate change. But some said they doubted whether these nations would support a deal even if the equity issue was addressed. Another sticking point is whether the deal should allow for continued consumption if emissions are captured or abated. Diplomats say Saudi Arabia, a top oil producer, wants this kind of deal. But the tech is expensive and not used at scale. The UN's Climate Science Panel says it sees a limited role for carbon capture to zero out the world's emissions by 2050. The US and EU support a COP28 deal that recognizes these technologies with limits. Irish Climate Minister Eamon Ryan says it can help in some sectors.
There will be a small amount abated in hard-to-reach sectors, cement, steel, other areas, but that can't be a get-out-of-jail card for international fossil fuel companies, cover for kind of technological wish that we're going to invent this new technology to eat up all the carbon.
The UN's Climate Science Panel says steep fossil fuel cuts are needed to avert more severe climate change.
And with that, it's a wrap here from my side. Thank you so much for watching. This is Krishna Kumar signing off. Keep it with News 9 Live.
Hello everyone, Namaskar. I'm music composer Ricky Cage.